My wife cheated with one of my employees, and during the divorce, tried to have him replace me as CEO so she could claim half the company. She didn't realize the business had been legally in my mom's name for years. My name is Daniel. I am 41 years old. I work in operations and strategy for a manufacturing company in the Midwest. I live outside Chicago in a quiet suburb. My days are structured and repetitive by choice. Early mornings, long meetings, gym after work, dinner at home. I like systems that work and problems that can be solved. My wife is Lauren. She is 38. We were together for 11 years and married for 8. We lived together the entire marriage and shared a house, a dog, and the usual adult logistics. No kids. That was deliberate, at least on my end. I am posting here because my divorce turned into something so absurd that even my lawyer paused mid-sentence and asked me if I was joking. I was not. I own a company, not a flashy startup. A boring, profitable, well-run business that supplies components to larger manufacturers. I became CEO 6 years ago after buying out 2 partners. It employs about 60 people. I do not talk about it much because people tend to make assumptions when they hear the word CEO. The reality is that I work a lot and stress constantly about payroll and supply chains. Lauren loved the title. She did not love the work behind it. Early in our marriage, she stopped working full-time. That was a joint decision on paper. In practice, it became permanent. She told people she was supporting me by managing the household. What that mostly meant was online shopping, Pilates classes, and complaining that I was never around even when I was sitting 10 feet away answering emails. She had a sharp tongue. Always had. I brushed it off for years as humor or stress or personality. She corrected waiters. She talked down to contractors. She referred to my employees as my people in a way that never sat right with me. If I pushed back, she accused me of being sensitive. The problems escalated last year when she started showing unusual interest in my office, dropping by unannounced, lingering after meetings, asking pointed questions about who did what and who reported to whom. At the time, I thought she was bored. I was wrong. This is where things start to get complicated. The first time I noticed something was off was a Wednesday in late spring. I had a vendor call that ran long, so I skipped lunch and ate at my desk. Around 2, my assistant told me Lauren was in the lobby. That alone was weird. Lauren did not show up at my office unless she wanted to be seen. She also never waited like a normal person. She treated reception like her personal runway. I walked out and found her leaning on the counter, smiling at my receptionist like they were friends. She was dressed like she had a lunch reservation at an expensive place, not like she was dropping in on her husband's factory-adjacent office park. She kissed my cheek, then immediately asked where Ryan was. Ryan is one of my project managers. Mid-30s. Good at his job. Married. Normal guy. The kind of employee you build stability around. I asked why she needed Ryan. She said she had a question about the new software rollout, and she wanted someone who actually understands the day-to-day, not the leadership version of the story. That phrasing bothered me. Leadership version. Like I was spinning fairy tales. I told her Ryan was in a meeting and asked her what the question was so I could answer it. She rolled her eyes and said it was fine. She would find him herself. Then she walked past me down the hallway like she owned the place. I stopped her and said no. Visitors do not wander. It is basic security and basic respect. She sighed loudly, looked back at my receptionist, and gave this little smirk like I was the embarrassing one. Then she said I was getting controlling again. That was her favorite word. Controlling. It was the word she used any time I said no. I took her back to my office, answered her questions, and she left in a mood. On the drive home that night, I kept replaying it. Not because it was a big fight. Because it felt like the first time I saw the gears turning in her head and realized I had no idea what the machine was building. 2 weeks later, she did it again. Different excuse. Same target. That time I did what I should have done the first time. I pulled Ryan aside, asked him if Lauren had been messaging him, and told him to be honest because I was not mad at him. His face went blank in a way that answered me before he spoke. He said she had added him on Instagram a while back. Then she started sending work-related questions. Then it turned into late-night comments about how hard I must be to live with. He said he tried to ignore it, and I realized I was not dealing with boredom. I was dealing with intent. I did not confront Lauren right away, not because I was scared, but because I wanted to understand the full shape of the problem before touching it. I have learned the hard way that reacting early feels good and solves nothing. Over the next month, I paid attention. She suddenly cared a lot about how many people reported to whom. She asked what would happen if I stepped back one day. She made comments about how certain employees had leadership potential if they were given a chance. Ryan's name came up more than once, always framed as an observation, never a suggestion. She also got meaner. Every disagreement ended with her reminding me that the company existed because she supported me. If I disagreed, she accused me of rewriting history. She started correcting me in front of friends when I talked about work. She told people I was lucky she handled the emotional labor so I could focus on being important. One night over dinner, she said something that finally snapped things into focus. She said, half joking, that if I ever burned out, she would make sure the company stayed in good hands. I asked what that meant. She said someone younger, more energetic, someone who actually listens. She smiled when she said it. That night, I checked our shared iPad. I was not proud of it, but I was past pride. Her messages to Ryan were no longer ambiguous. They were flirtatious, resentful, conspiratorial. They framed me as an obstacle, not a husband, not a partner, a bottleneck. I confronted her the next morning, calmly, directly. She did not deny the affair. She said it happened because I was emotionally unavailable and too obsessed with control. She said Ryan made her feel seen. She said if I was a better husband, she would not have needed validation elsewhere. Then she said something that chilled me. She said during the divorce, she would make sure she got what she deserved. At the time, I thought she meant money. I did not yet understand she meant the company itself. I filed for divorce the following week. No ultimatum. No trial separation. No dramatic showdown. I called an attorney, gathered documents, and served her papers on a Tuesday afternoon while she was out getting her hair done. By the time she came home, it was already in motion. She laughed when she saw the envelope. She actually laughed and said I was overreacting and that we could work through it once I calmed down. When I told her I was done, the laughter stopped and the tone shifted instantly. She went cold and precise, like a switch flipped. Within days, she had her own attorney, and the posture changed completely. She stopped talking about the marriage and started talking about entitlement, about sacrifice, about her contribution to my success, about what she would take me for. Then Ryan resigned. Not quietly. He sent an email to the entire leadership team thanking me for the opportunity and announcing he was moving on to something more aligned with his values. That phrase alone told me everything I needed to know. 2 weeks later, I learned what Lauren had been planning. Her attorney filed a motion requesting that Ryan be appointed interim CEO during the divorce proceedings. The argument was that I was emotionally compromised, distracted, and no longer fit to manage day-to-day operations while assets were being divided. The filing cited her involvement in the business, her advisory role, and her relationship with key personnel. Yes, they openly referenced the affair. Lauren believed that if Ryan replaced me temporarily, she could argue that the company's ongoing success was no longer tied to me specifically. That would make it a marital asset subject to equal division. She thought she was being clever. What she did not know was that the business was never legally mine in the first place. The company has been in my mother's name since before I ever became CEO. That was not some last-minute shell game or a panic move. It was a boring, conservative decision made years ago with lawyers and accountants involved, for reasons that had nothing to do with divorce and everything to do with risk. When my dad died, my mom inherited his share. When I bought out the other partners later, we kept the ownership structure exactly where it was. I ran the company. I signed checks. I made decisions. But legally, the entity sat under her name and a family trust. I was paid as an executive. Well paid, but not the owner. Lauren never asked. She assumed. Her attorney clearly assumed too. The first time her lawyer realized something was off was during discovery. They requested ownership documents. What they got back did not match the story Lauren had been telling him. I will never forget the emergency call I got from my attorney that afternoon. He was trying not to laugh and failing. He said they had just learned that Lauren had no claim to the company because it was never a marital asset. Not partially, not indirectly, not creatively. Zero. I was not hiding it. It was public record. The next hearing was the first time I saw real panic on Lauren's face. Her entire strategy collapsed in real time. The request to install Ryan as interim CEO was withdrawn within 24 hours. Ryan stopped responding to her messages shortly after that. Apparently, replacing your affair partner's husband works better when the affair partner actually has power. She accused me of betrayal, of trickery, of humiliating her on purpose. I told her I had never lied. I had simply never corrected her assumptions. The divorce shifted immediately. What was supposed to be a power grab turned into damage control. She went from aggressive to angry to desperate in the span of a month. And the best part was that the more she pushed, the worse she looked. Judges do not love theatrical entitlement, especially when it is paired with documented infidelity and a failed corporate coup. That is when she finally realized she had overplayed everything. Once the company angle collapsed, Lauren shifted tactics. She started telling anyone who would listen that I had manipulated her for years, that I had assets, that I used my mother as a shield. None of it landed the way she expected, mostly because the paperwork was boring, clean, and old. There was no drama in it, just dates and signatures that predated our marriage by years. By then, she was no longer living in the house. After the interim CEO stunt failed and her attorney quietly withdrew the motion, I had my lawyer file for exclusive use of the marital home. The argument was straightforward. She was not working. She had no financial stake in the business. She had introduced an employee into our personal life in a way that created ongoing conflict. I needed stability to continue running operations. The judge agreed faster than I expected. Lauren was given 30 days to move out. She acted shocked, like this was a betrayal rather than a consequence. She told friends I threw her out. She told her parents I blindsided her. In reality, she packed slowly, loudly, and with commentary, making sure I heard every cabinet slam and muttered insult. The day she left, she stood in the doorway and told me I would regret humiliating her. The house was quiet that night in a way I had not felt in years. From there, her behavior escalated outward instead of inward. Since she could no longer control the space, she tried to control the story. The accusations got louder. The version of events got sloppier. She demanded spousal support based on a lifestyle she assumed she was still entitled to, despite no longer having access to it. Her own attorney shut that down quickly. Meanwhile, Ryan vanished. Once it became clear he was not getting a promotion, power, or protection, he stopped responding to her messages. Apparently, ambition only looks attractive when it comes with an office and authority attached. That realization hit her harder than anything else. By the time she understood she had lost the house, the company, and the narrative, there was nothing left to leverage. Just a standard divorce proceeding and a long list of burned bridges she could no longer cross back over. Once Lauren was out of the house, the illusion that she still had control started to crack in visible ways. She began sending long emails. Not to me directly at first, but to my attorney, copied to hers, framed like position statements and written in the tone of someone who believed volume could substitute for leverage. Each message revisited the same themes: betrayal, deception, emotional cruelty. She kept insisting that the company was the real issue, even after being told repeatedly that it was not on the table. It was like watching someone argue with a door that had already closed. She also started showing up places she did not need to be. Mutual friends events, charity functions she had never cared about before. She made sure to mention the divorce loudly, always within earshot of people who might repeat it. The story changed slightly each time, which is usually how you can tell someone is panicking. At work, things stabilized quickly. Ryan never tried to return. HR informed me he had taken a position at a smaller firm in another state. I did not interfere. I did not comment. I simply instructed management to route all questions through proper channels and move on. The board backed me without hesitation. That was not loyalty. That was relief. Lauren, meanwhile, kept expecting a dramatic response from me. A phone call, a confrontation, some sign that she still mattered enough to provoke emotion. When that did not happen, she escalated again. She filed a motion claiming I was intentionally delaying settlement to punish her. The judge dismissed it in under 10 minutes. That was the first time she cried in court. Not quietly, not gracefully, loud enough that the bailiff shifted in his seat. She looked around the room like she was waiting for someone to rescue her, to validate her outrage, to agree that this was unfair. No one did. After that hearing, her attorney requested a private recess. When they came back, the tone changed completely. No more threats. No more grandstanding. Just numbers and logistics and an obvious desire to end things before more damage occurred. I signed the settlement 2 weeks later. No company, no control, no last word. Just an ending she never planned for and could not rewrite. And for the first time since all of this began, I slept through the night. The weeks after the settlement were quiet in a way that felt earned. Lauren tried to break that silence a few times. Not directly. She would send messages through mutual acquaintances, framed as concern, asking if I was okay, saying she hoped there were no hard feelings. The same woman who once tried to remove me from my own company now wanted a soft landing for her conscience. I did not respond. The house felt different without her presence. Not empty. Clear. I repainted rooms she had insisted stay neutral. I replaced furniture she picked because it looked expensive instead of comfortable. The dog relaxed in ways I had not noticed were missing. Even my mornings felt lighter. Less tension. Fewer calculations. At work, people stopped whispering. The rumors faded once it became obvious there was no scandal left to uncover. No secret ownership tricks. No implosion. Just a failed attempt that ended quietly and decisively. The company kept running. Orders shipped. Payroll cleared. Life went on, which is the one thing Lauren never planned for. I did hear one update I did not ask for. Ryan's new job did not last long. Apparently, he struggled without the structure he used to complain about. He was not a visionary. He was a middle manager who confused proximity to power with capability. When that illusion disappeared, so did his confidence. Lauren, according to a friend who probably should have kept it to herself, was furious about that. She told people he had wasted her time, that he had promised things he could not deliver. It was strange hearing her describe him the same way she once described me. I changed my number after that. Not out of fear, out of finality. The divorce was over on paper, but emotionally it did not truly end until I stopped being available as a reference point for her anger. Once she could no longer point at me as the reason her life stalled, she had to sit with the consequences alone. That part, I suspect, hurt the most. The only loose end left was Lauren herself. About 3 months after everything was finalized, she emailed me from a new address. The subject line was neutral, something about logistics. I almost did not open it. The message was long and carefully written. She said she had been doing a lot of reflecting. She said the divorce had been a wake-up call. She said she felt misled by people who encouraged her worst instincts. She did not name Ryan, but she did not have to. She asked if we could meet for coffee to talk like adults and get closure. I showed the email to my attorney. He smiled and told me there was nothing legally required of me anymore. No reason to respond. No benefit to engaging. I still thought about it for a full day, not because I missed her, because part of me wanted to see if she understood what she had actually done, whether there was any accountability hiding under the new language. Then I realized something important. Closure was what she wanted, not what I needed. She wanted to walk away believing this ended with mutual understanding instead of consequences. She wanted a conversation where she could soften the narrative one last time and leave feeling justified. I had already given her enough space in my life. I did not reply. She sent one more email a week later. Shorter, sharper, asking if I was really going to ignore her after everything we shared. That confirmed the decision for me. At work, we finalized a long-delayed expansion project. My mom came by the office one afternoon, something she rarely does, and congratulated the team. Watching her talk to employees who respected her and the company reminded me why the ownership structure existed in the first place. Not to protect me from Lauren, to protect the business from chaos. Lauren had been chaos. I blocked the email address and moved on. There was nothing left to explain. A year later, my life is quieter and significantly more predictable. The company is doing well. Not explosive growth. Sustainable growth. The kind that lets people sleep at night. I promoted 2 internal leads who had earned it long before the chaos. Morale recovered once everyone realized the drama was not coming back. I still live in the same house. It feels like mine now in a way it never did before. The space reflects how I actually live instead of how someone wanted it to look. I host small dinners. I read in the evenings. I leave my phone in another room without worrying about what might blow up while I am gone. Lauren moved out of state. I heard that through my mother, who heard it from someone else entirely. That detail matters because it means she is no longer orbiting my life in any way. No shared circles. No chance encounters. No updates unless I go looking for them. I did not. What still stands out to me is how confident she was at the start. How certain she felt that she understood the system she was trying to manipulate. She mistook proximity for ownership, access for authority, marriage for leverage. She thought replacing me would be simple. She never considered that the people who build things usually design them to survive removal attempts, especially from the inside. I am not angry anymore. Anger requires engagement. What I feel instead is clarity. The kind that comes from watching someone show you exactly who they are when they believe they are winning. If there is advice buried in this, it is boring advice. Ask questions. Know your structures. Pay attention when someone treats your work like something they deserve rather than something they respect. And if someone ever assumes they own what you built just because they stood near it long enough, let the paperwork speak for you. It usually does.